Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. This is Annika Jackson with Your Brand Amplified, and I am so over the moon to have Nathaniel Harding from Cortado Ventures with us today. First episode of 2024 that is unpacking the mystery of finance and money and all the things that people know that they need in business, but don't always know how to access. So Nathaniel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Annika. It's a pleasure.
And I'd love for you to start, before we push record, we're talking a little about your unconventional story of how you got into venture capital. And I know you have so much success. You are a Kauffman Fellow, a venture partner for Republic. You're a young global leader for the World Economic Forum and a most admired CEO in Oklahoma, and on and on and on, and so many other wonderful things that you've done and poured into the world. So take us back, and how did you get started on this journey, and what was unconventional about it for you?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And so, first I'll describe what conventional looks like. And so in the venture capital world, you have people from Silicon Valley that kind of grow up in their career working for other venture capital firms, or you have somebody that worked for a startup, for a software company, and then jump over to the VC side. And but a lot of it's concentrated in those traditional hubs like the Bay Area. But really for me, I'm born and bred Oklahoman. I've been all over the world, but always called Oklahoma home. And I worked in the oil and gas industry, a very traditional legacy industry. I also was in the Air Force, deployed in 2012 to Afghanistan. And, but really what defined my early career was using technology to innovate in a legacy industry, in this case, oil and gas, but also worked in a very, technology-driven side when I deployed in Afghanistan. And so we worked with logistics and intelligence. And that was really, my journey. But then I saw that there really wasn't a lot of venture capital available in this part of the country, and not so much in the sectors that we're talking about, like energy and logistics. And it occurred to me, I want to invest in that next generation, both in people and the technologies. And so we took the plunge in 2020 and started Cortado Ventures to do just that.
Fantastic. And thank you for your service. My grandfather was a colonel in the Air Force. Great. My dad and one uncle were in the Army, and then two uncles went to West Point. So I always love hearing from people, particularly who've been in the military and been able to take their service and do really amazing things in their careers afterwards. So,
yeah, well, thank you for your family's service. I know it can be a lot for every member of the family when you have a service member. Yeah. And I was Air Force, and so really thankful for that time.
Yeah. And so I love that you're looking at different industries, and you talked about a couple of them. What do you look for when you're figuring out who you want to finance? Like, what is your ideal avatar, or a couple of them of companies that would come to you?
Yeah, we look at the team building it, but also the product. So I'll talk about the team first. We love unconventional founders. Since my pathway to venture capital was unconventional, I guess I have an affinity for those who come from different backgrounds. Our portfolio, we have 40 companies in the portfolio, and they're led by founders that come from all walks of life that immigrated to the U.S., or they just have non-traditional backgrounds in terms of education, where they come from, and a lot of founders that worked in an industry where they saw a better way. Maybe they were frustrated with how things were working or weren't working in their industry, and decided to go off and do it themselves, build a software or a device or a product to do something better. And so the industries that we look at, so we like to see the intersection of digital technology and the built environment or real assets. And so think of if you're trying to improve an efficiency in a manufacturing process. So think of like AI applied to manufacturing. And so using what we all hear a lot about now, AI is the buzzword, but what about AI in advanced manufacturing to do so, to produce more efficiently, to save time and money and fuel, which we also think is good for the world. Some attributes of a company or of a technology would be, is the technology 10 times better than everything else out there? That's one rule of thumb. Is it 10 times cheaper, 10 times more productive? Can it save time? And for where there's a real demand to the tune of, it's $1 billion market. We love companies that are selling into $1 billion market. Now, you can't boil the ocean, and so you can't just all of a sudden magically have 10% market share. But can you demonstrate that you have a compelling go-to-market strategy? So in other words, pick a niche within that large market that you can sell to and repeat. And a CEO, a founder that really focuses and obsesses over those first 10 customers and making those first 10 customers wildly happy and with that product, that's another good sign. And so we love traction. We love seeing companies that are growing in revenue. But what about companies that are early on?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I say, if I can talk to your customer and if they tell me that they would be upset if all of a sudden that product went away, if the technology you're building disappeared, then that customer would be upset. Then that's a good sign because you built something really special and can then repeat that sales motion and scale to that $1 billion market.
Wow. I love that you baked this innovation aspect in from the start, because like you said, AI is the big buzzword this year, but AI has been around for a lot longer than people realize. And thinking about the efficiencies that you can put into a process in an industry. And, there's so many arguments of, okay, but you create more efficiency, but is that going to take away jobs? But my argument is that there are other jobs that are created out of that. And so there's still a lot of space for workforce within creating better efficiencies and companies that are doing better, pouring better outputs, but also better products and making the environment better at the same time.
Yeah, there are jobs that get phased out, but many new ones that get created. We often think that a new technology is going to all of a sudden just have a net loss in jobs, but you actually see there's a net growth in jobs. The jobs, frankly, I think are a lot of times more interesting as opposed to kind of, assembly line, worker. All of a sudden now you're working at a system level with a technology. And so now the skills required are different, but I think require more creativity and more of the human input, even as we automate more and more things, frankly means that, some of the jobs that are more repetitive go away, but the ones that are more interesting, that keep us more engaged and that really lean on the unique inputs and the things that only humans can do, those jobs become more and more in demand. And so, as a father of 3, I think about how do I advise my children on what to focus on in their education. I think more about, liberal arts and creativity and really, problem solving as opposed to, more rote memorization and certain skills that may be outdated in just a couple of years. And so it just changes, and change can be difficult, but the arrow of progress is always pointing in the same direction. And we love, as venture capitalists, being a part of that and backing the people that are building it.
Yeah. When you moved into venture capital, was it a huge shift? Like, did you have to have a huge shift in your own way of thinking and the way you framed conversations, the way you framed work? Was it hard to get, did you all self-fund? Do you get money from a lot of different investors? What was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, because venture capital is typically built where, we raise money from investors, like, what they're called limited partners or LPs. Mm-hmm. And so, over the last 3 years, we've raised $100 million from about 100 different people and organizations. And they entrust us to then manage those funds. And mm-hmm. so once we've raised that fund, we go out and deploy that capital on behalf of our investors. We're also investors. And so, we eat our own cooking. And but as far as, kind of my day-to-day job, sometimes founders have to go out and raise money from time to time, and they may not realize that venture capital firms, we're raising money all the time, and it's really the lifeblood of what we do to be able to put that money together to invest in new companies. So my day to day certainly has changed from managing engineers and geologists to develop a new asset, like an oil and gas asset, to now investor relations, but also founder relations. Because the other part of our key part of our existence is having a healthy pipeline of companies that we can evaluate and hopefully find a great fit for. There's also a cultural difference. I think the venture capital, the whole world of innovation is young and energetic, and it's always about the art of the new. And so we're always having to evaluate ideas that nobody's seen before. Yeah. Whereas in my previous roles, it was really about executing like a known, type of company or a known market, but doing so with excellence. But now it's pivoting to, we're having to really try to divine what the future holds. Yeah. And is an idea crazy or awesome or like the edge of both? Because that's probably where you need to be. And so there's a lot of dealing with uncertainty. And I think that actually the experience in the military helps with that, because in the military, you're dealing with uncertainty all the time, but you have to have a plan and be able to adapt. So a lot of day-to-day differences, cultural differences. The dress code's a little bit different, no more, coat and tie, but I just love the vibe of hanging out with, founders and getting to see what the future holds.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about, because Oklahoma City, people don't usually think of that as a bastion of finance and VC funding and innovation. I myself told you I'm from Lawrence, Kansas originally. I know Kansas City is a big hub now, Denver. So there are these pockets in the Midwest that really are becoming known by people who research, right, and are in the know as places to go that might be a little less expensive than the coasts, but do have a lot of great innovation and creativity going on. So what does that look like in Oklahoma City? And do the 40 companies that you're now invested in, which is amazing, are they all over the globe? Are they primarily in the Midwest or the United States?
Yeah, our companies, there certainly is a high concentration in the area that we call the mid-continent, which I'll describe as Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, and New Mexico. Or for the shorthand, every state that touches Oklahoma, which is really chosen as that's an area where we believe that the innovators that are really creating compelling technologies in those sectors that we care about, they by and large come from that part of the country.
Wow.
Because that's where the industry is, and that's where they kind of solve the problem that they're now solving. And so that's a key part of our geography. Now, it's less important where the CEO lives and more important the market they're selling to. So if a company's founded in some other part of the country, but yet they're selling into a market where we have a lot of network and know-how, then that's interesting for us. Now, a lot of times when you're starting a company, proximity matters. So when you're obsessing over those first 10 customers, like I described earlier, it helps to be close to them. So you can be, it's a high touch process to get those first 10 customers. So with that, over half of our portfolio is in Oklahoma or has some significant presence here. Most of the rest is in that broader mid-continent region that I just described. And then there are some companies that are outside of the region, but that are selling into this market. All U.S. companies, so that's part of our criteria, has to be a U.S. C corporation. But they come from all over, but a lot of conviction around backing companies that are in the mid-continent. Because also that high-touch aspect of selling to those first customers, it's also true in the early stages of investing. We're investing in companies that you can't find on PitchBook or other databases. So how do you find them? We believe that, physically meeting them and being at the demo days and the pitch competitions, being a part of the programs that work with entrepreneurs, that's how you find them. And so we also like investing in an area where it's a day's drive or a short nonstop flight to get to it so we can have a physical presence at every event and program happening in our region.
Nice. What was a big aha moment or shocker for you? What was something really surprising about venture capital versus your previous world?
Yeah, really when we started in 2020, so we started like a month and a half into the pandemic.
My gosh.
And didn't know if we were, again, the crazy or awesome paradigm. We don't know where we were on it, but you want to be right in the middle. We set up to raise $10 million, which at the time was considered to be a lot for this market and a lot of doubters that it could happen. We ended up raising $10 million in like 2 months. So then it was like, well, maybe 15 is the right number. So we moved to 15. Then it ended up at 20. We ended up raising double our goal. And that was the first aha moment that clearly we're doing something that the market is responding to. Investors are piling in. They see the world the same way we do. With the pandemic, there was definitely a shakeup in how we all work and live. But then also, historically, whenever you have a dislocation in the market, you have innovators that step up, you have incumbent companies that struggle. And so innovation wins. So how do you benefit from that? Well, venture capital is a great way to do that. And so that was the first aha moment. But now we're seeing this flywheel effect of we receive inquiries on a weekly basis from established corporations that are reaching out to us saying, how can we be involved in the community that you've built, Cortado, to innovate in our business? And so we have established corporations that are recognizing that, tech founders are out there, that if they're not paying attention, they're going to be disrupted. So instead of being disrupted, be a part of the disruption and be on the winning side. And so I guess another aha moment was, now there's a certain level of maturity in this market to where the established players are taking notice. And so we're on to something and just keep it going.
That is really beautiful. Can you talk about, because you have a few different, I know you said US based, unconventional founders, perhaps, mid-continent preferred, maybe a few outliers. What are some of the other criteria that you look for? Because I know I work with a lot of startups all across the board, whether it's social media, social media company that has changed the way that you use AI and use different tools to do social media, or an app that teaches kids about financial literacy, or hyperbaric oxygen therapy that's innovated and created new technologies around that and is trying to get it into. So I worked with a lot of different people who do different things, and they all have different stories. Some have found it easier to find funding, some have found it harder. So I'd love to continue that conversation with you about what are some other things that you really look for, and do they need to have some measure of success? Can they be pre-launch?
We look for things, so post-product. So think of it, the term we use is minimum viable product, MVP. So whatever you're inventing, you don't need to be done developing it, but it needs to be in a condition that you can start to sell it to pilot customers. And so you can be pre-revenue, but as long as you have some customers that we can reference that are using it and can attest to it, it's okay if it doesn't look the way you want it to, it didn't have all the features, but just really, what is the key capability of what you're building? Just build that much and then see, and then get feedback from the market.
Right.
And so having an MVP is the bare minimum. But then I'll call the 1-5-25 rule. So your revenue should be between 0 and 1 million.
Okay.
You should be raising between 1 million and 5 million, and your valuation should be between 5 and 25 million. So if you kind of hit those marks, 0 to 1 million revenue, raising 1 to 5, valuation 5 to 25, then that's a great condition precedent for us to take a hard look.
Oh.
And then besides that, the high-tech filter. So is what you're building has to be technology.
Yeah.
We also filter for B2B. And so we don't do consumer or retail technologies. We invest in B2B companies that have a B2B model where their customers are companies. So that's another filter for us. And, something that's just unique to Cortado. It's not necessarily true for all venture capital. Yeah. There's other VCs that only invest in retail and consumer and have great success. So it's important, I think, for a founder to know who their audience is when it comes to fundraising. You can get an unlimited number of no's by barking up the wrong tree.
Got it.
And if you're reaching out to VCs or just any kind of investor where it's just not a fit, then it'll be frustrating. But if you can filter, we have our filters. Well, founders should have filters too about who are the right kind of investors. If it's too early for venture capital, then perhaps angels is the way to go.
Hey.
Some people are lucky enough to have family and friends who can write checks. But if that's not you, then there's angel investors, there's angel networks out there. So it's a one-to-many connection, to where instead of just pitching one person at a time, you're pitching a whole network of angels. So that's another route to go. And then lastly, accelerators. There's programs out there like Y Combinator and Techstars and Generator that have a national model, locations all over the US, where you can apply. And if you get in, you go through this boot camp for 8 to 12 weeks to learn how to really go from idea to MVP. And then you also get funding, some initial, pre-seed funding as part of that.
Yeah.
So there's also grant applications that you can apply to. I say all that because if we say no because something's too early, we still want to keep track of it. If it's the kind of technology that's compelling, we want to see them kind of grow up into our sweet spot. And so a lot of times we'll help, steer that founder in the right direction of,
that's right.
No, not yet, but let us introduce you to this program that can get you to where you want to be. And then, we'll have a conversation then about investing.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love the 1-5-25. I've never heard that before.
I made it up just now.
But it's actually a fantastic way to look at things, and a good way for people to frame, for companies who are looking for investment, to frame, are they ready to go to a company like yours? And I know there are companies that invest at different levels. Having 40 companies in your portfolio, do you usually say, okay, we only invest X amount in each company, or is it very case dependent?
Yeah, typically what we see, and you can come up with all kinds of ways, to raise money, and there's a lot of money outside of venture capital. And so venture capital may not even be the right fit for somebody, because venture capital, it can be dilutive because we take some equity of the company. There's also a big requirement for hyper growth. And so if that's not the model, then there's other sources of capital that are frankly less expensive. And so we always try to have that candid conversation of, venture capital may not even be the right fit. There may be better ways for the founder to raise money. But within the kind of venture capital construct, you'll typically see, certainly at the seed stage or kind of pre-seed Series A, a company that is selling about 15 to 35% equity in their business. And so they're going out there trying to raise, let's say, $1 million on a $5 million valuation. So 20%. And so that's pretty typical. And I always recommend that if you're going out there raising money, be fairway. If you try to get really novel, like you're already doing something novel with your technology, you're already doing something novel by starting a new company, don't also be novel on how you're raising money, because then you're just like creating a third problem for yourself. So if you want to be fairway, think of going out there and, selling 15 to 35% of your company to investors. And investors like us, you'll have 3 or 4 or up to 10 investors like us that will pile into a round. And so we at Cortado, we target 6 to 10% equity in the company.
Yeah.
And so if that company is raising 20, 25%, then we would take about a third of that. And so you can think of it that way. We may lead around by doing a third of that, and then we'll have other investors pile in to make up the rest of that.
Interesting.
And so you can expect that, in the venture capital journey, one can expect it to look like that. So you're probably not going to have just one VC take the whole round. And you don't really want one to take the whole round, because you want a lot of smart people around the table. Yeah. You may not have a board yet. You may just have advisors. You may just have cheerleaders that wrote you checks and want you to win. But you want to have several smart people around that, looking out for your success, that you can lean on for introductions to customers and advice on building your company.
Fantastic. I think you've given such a clear example of how somebody can work with a VC and the different considerations they should have. So I really appreciate you unpacking that for us. And I know the company hasn't been around that long, but I'd love to hear any success stories with one of the companies, because even though it's early days, can you share, I don't know if you want to share names of the companies that you invest in, or if you just want to share a couple of
we always follow the lead of the company on if they want to announce something or not. But one is NuView, N-U-V-I-E-W, NuView. They use LiDAR on satellites. So it's the same technology that self-driving cars use to figure out where they are. Wow. But they're using LiDAR on satellites to scan every surface of the Earth to create high-fidelity 3D imagery. And so who uses that? So that would be like, think of infrastructure companies, pipeline companies. Think of agriculture. Anybody who wants to evaluate something at scale, but to a high degree of fidelity. And so this company, NuView, they published recently that they already have over $1 billion in customer agreements.
Oh my gosh.
And we were an early investor when it was, where they had just, again, an MVP to illustrate that it can work. And so we invested a couple of years ago, doubled down recently. They also announced an investment from Leo DiCaprio, the actor. And so that's just a fun fact that we're now a co-investor with DiCaprio. And some other things they haven't announced yet, but are really, really exciting for when they launch, and really excited about that success. Another company that I'll just describe, can't share the name, but another company, they use AI in the oil field. And so kind of that example of using new technology in an old industry. And we invested when they were just barely starting to make money. They've now grown 50-fold in revenue in about 2 years. So what is that, 5,000%? And so they've grown substantially. They're now profitable. And so they don't need to raise any more money. So no more dilution for us or for themselves. And they recently landed the biggest customer in the world for what they do. And so expect another 50x growth over the next 2 years. So this huge success. And I think a testament to the example, both of these founders, one was from Oklahoma, one is an immigrant, and both from non-traditional backgrounds, both doing something and kind of combining the digital and the real world in a novel way, and have had a lot of success in growing their company.
Wow. That has to be so fun for you too, to see that you stepped into this journey. I mean, I'm sure there were some struggles as well, but you found a lot of success. And I know not every company is going to necessarily find this level of success as these two, but those are two amazing examples. So you have to feel really proud and happy to have been part of that journey and still be part of that journey.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. My life is a lot different now than it was, 4 years ago. And I get to be around, meet these founders that are building their dreams, and it's very inspirational. But you're also kind of building a community. Since we are doing something unique to the market, we really feel a lot of obligation, responsibility to help build a community around us. So what does that look like? And we've partnered with organizations like The Verge, which is an incubator here, Generator, which is an accelerator program, and others to help provide more and more resources for founders to increase the odds of their success. Because if we increase the odds of their success, then that increases the odds of our success. And so it's this self-licking ice cream cone of success. And we've definitely taken definitely had hard days for sure. And it's hard to raise money, and it's hard to do something, new, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Fantastic. And you also don't have to be traveling quite as much. So more family time as well, I'm sure, which I think we're always as entrepreneurs trying to figure out that elusive balance and making sure we're pouring into those relationships too, while we're also chasing our dreams and expanding our dreams.
Yeah, working for yourself, it gives you flexibility, but it also means you have flexibility to just like keep working. There's no way to tell you to stop, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's something, that I personally work on a lot. Don't always get it right, but try to have that balance. Sometimes you can blend them. Like my daughter was actually here at the office yesterday.
Oh, nice.
She wasn't like super pumped to come, but when she was here, she was fine. But I've taken her to some other things to kind of see like, what do we do? Like get exposure to everything that we do, so that way she can be inspired and have ideas for what she wants to do. So I think there's some unique ways to blend that.
Yeah, I don't know how old your kids are, but my daughter's 15 and she is going into something that could be marketing related, but she's not going to use it as marketing tool. She's going to be a neuroscientist and a researcher, but she's at an age now where she sees what I do and she asks me questions. Who are you meeting with today? Oh, what is that about? And is interested and engaged. And it's so fun to see them make that connection between, it's not just mom or dad going off to work, but now they're starting to see what we do and how it is impacting other people.
Yeah, I think that's a special experience. My oldest is almost 14, so yeah, similar. Yeah. And I like to just joking the other day with somebody, it's like, when you're a kid, you kind of think there's like athletes and celebrities and then just like other. Yeah, everything else is just other. Like briefcase, computer, I don't know. And and so the more you can learn about that at a young age, I think is really important.
Yeah. I love the way that you frame that. And I'm going to have to remember that. Briefcase or computer.
Yeah.
Is there one last thing that you'd like to leave with anybody who's listening? Because all the entrepreneurs who are listening who are still looking for elusive funding, you mentioned so many great ways for them to think about funding, think about ways to get funding, whether it's grants, joining incubator programs, going to these different events, finding angels versus VC funding. But is there one last thing that they should prepare, that they should know as they're going on this journey?
Yeah, I think tactically, don't think that you need to have a business plan. Business plans are actually kind of old school now. And so think more about having a deck. I mean, it's literally a presentation that's like 10 to 15 slides that really tells the story and answers the questions, why this technology or product? Why you? Why are you the person to build it? And why now? Like, why is the market ready? So why this, why you, why now? If you can answer those three questions to yourself first, and then put it out on just a short deck, that's really all you need to go out there and start raising money. Don't feel like you need to build this kind of MBA, business plan. It's more important just to start and get feedback from the market. And so that's in general, but then specifically for us, I want to invite anybody who thinks they fit the description that we laid out earlier, who wants to pitch us, please reach out. Our website is cortado.ventures. You can click on contact us, and there's a short 1-minute survey that'll give you feedback of either this is interesting, click here for a meeting, or this is, not a fit for this reason, but here's some resources and where else you can go. We're able to provide a list of hundreds of VCs and with the descriptions of what they look for. So we can kind of help, direct somebody in the right direction if it's not us. But definitely want to invite the builders out there, the dreamers that are doing something in this part of the country or that are building a technology into a legacy industry to reach out to us. And, even if you think it's too early, it's a good time to start talking.
Yeah. And the fact that you're providing a resource of other VCs and other opportunities is, I think, unparalleled, because I don't know any other VCs who offer that resource. So you're doing a huge service, whether somebody is a fit for you or not. So thank you for that. And
yeah, it's our pleasure.
Yeah. And the last question I want to ask, do you have a quote, a mantra, a verse, some family motto, any words of wisdom that you live by?
I think in general, it's important to start, right? We can all kind of get stuck in our heads and think about all the things that can go wrong or about how hard it's going to be. But really, the art of the start is what's so important. Mm-hmm. And, when we started Cortado, I think I counted it, I had 1,000 meetings in the first year. And it was all just asking dumb questions that hopefully were getting progressively less dumb. But really taking that feedback and then running with it. And I think, if I could ever stress to somebody, like I have, people that I mentor in my life, and you just got to start. It's going to be wrong, but you're really just going to find out quickly what's wrong instead of, thinking and dwelling for a year and then finding out what's wrong. And so really finding a way just to start to build what it is that's in your head, even if it's just a description, is I think really important, because you're going to find who's going to be your champion. You're going to get the introduction to the right investor. But it's also maybe a mantra beyond just business. If you have goals and try to go out there and do something that you think is going to be really hard, you just have to start. The best time to start is years ago, but then the second best time to start is right now. You can't make up for what's already happened, but you can take control of today.
Fantastic. This has been such a fantastic conversation, Nathaniel. I really appreciate you unpacking your story, your journey, the world of VC funding, what you look for, but what other people can do to prepare themselves to get funding in wide array of possibilities. I love that you are doing this in, my home part of the world. So needed. So thank you for your service and for your service in the military, but also for the service in what you're doing now to help provide companies and organizations with the funding to create these innovations in these legacy, constructs. So
yeah, well, thank you so much. It's been our pleasure, and I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody who's listening. Don't forget to check out Cortado.Ventures to learn more about VC funding opportunities, whether it's with Nathaniel's company or with one of his many resources that he offers on his website. And I really appreciate you coming back and watching or listening to this episode. I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert to unpack their tips, tricks, and wisdom to help you propel to the next level. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.